My name is Kris with a K, Kris Wimberly, and I'm currently directing at Disney TV animation. I wouldn't label myself a talented person, but a skillful person. I have this conversation a lot with people because I very generously people always tell, "Oh, you're so talented, you're so talented," and I thank them, and it's very flattering. But I think I've gotten to where I am based on being skillful, and that comes with a lot of work and a lot of focus and determination. When I was in art school, I kind of got into art school at a pretty big disadvantage because I'm not this like talented person. Uh, like I just woke up with this skill set, like jumped out of bed and all of a sudden, I'm working in the industry. Or so I spent a lot of time trying to measure up to peers that I felt were much better than me and all that kind of thing, to the point where, I had a lot of failed relationships in art school. By the time I finished school, I got hired at Nickelodeon. So I was at my dream studio on one of the biggest shows ever created. And that's the recipe for, being top to bottom, eternally happy and grateful, until I turned around to celebrate and nobody was there, because I had pushed away so many relationships and so many friends and broken promises of going to hang out and experience life, which on a side note is extremely important. If you want to tell stories and life stories, you need to go experience those. But I was so busy trying to get up my skill set and trying to perfect that stuff that, it was kind of lonely. So I did learn that lesson where I was like, oh man, maybe well, and then I don't know, like it worked, right? So I don't know for me, like what the answer is. Every show you go to, it's weird. They want you because you're good at what you do, but they want you to do it the way that they need it. So there is this weird sort of middle ground you have to find between those two things, where you do what you're good at and you deliver what they need in the way that they need it. So what ends up happening is the fundamentals that you learn, you don't lose those. But I think of it sort of like a toolbox, right? In your toolbox, you have everything you can think of that you will need: hammer, saw, screwdriver, measuring tape, whatever. But you don't need every tool for every project. It's nice to have them, but you don't need them for every project. So your job as a board artist, especially in the way that the industry is built now, which is very different than in the 40s, where you stay at one studio and you ride it out till you get your gold watch at the end of 50, 60 years. With this, you have to be kind of this gun for hire, where you need to figure out what it is this show is looking for and what in your toolbox will help you build that thing for them. Whenever I'm like the new person in the room, my thought process is I don't say anything. When I started working on Elena of Avalor, I came onto that show for season 3, and I was on there for the whole season 3. But my position was what we call a storyboard floater, which mirrors a lot of their duties of somebody who would be classified as maybe like an assistant director or something like that. So that means I'm sitting next to the director in many of the meetings. In editorial, we're like hashing out story and character decisions after the boards have been done. So there's a lot of like really deep fixing sometimes that has to happen. But in that, many times when we're sitting in editorial sessions, that comes with sitting in there with some of the higher leadership roles, like the executive producer, showrunner, the supervising director, like people who are normally, extremely busy and are running the show. So when I came in doing that position, I know what I'm worth. I know what my ideas are, that my ideas are valuable, but they've been doing this show for 2 seasons before I got there. So my job is not, even though they hired me to do this job, and they were very flattering when they hired me, they gave me all kinds of really great words of affirmation and a lot of support to come in. But I still took my usual route, which is to just sit and listen and absorb everybody's actions and reactions in the room. And I did that for weeks. I got to hear, how does the showrunner like to hear ideas presented to him? Which one of all these ideas is he picking? and does it match mine? Things like that, right? Like I'm just listening and absorbing who gets their answer taken the least, right? And not because that person isn't valuable, but because that person keeps missing the mark. They're not understanding how the story structure is, or whatever the case is. But I'm listening, and absorbing. And then finally, when I felt like, okay, now's the time, I slowly start interjecting. I slowly start trickling in, not in a rude way, but just in a like, well, I hear what that person's saying. I hear what you're two saying over here. What if we put these together? And then I interject what my real idea is. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's it. That's great. Let's do that. So here we are now. And the next show that I'm working on, which was the show creator created this new show, and I'm directing on it because he's like, Kris knows exactly what I need. He always listens to what people are saying. Like, he's the director material, but it's because of that process, right? Where I'm listening first and absorbing other people's personalities and actions, and then applying myself to those. I've spent a lot of time doing the role without it being called the role. Now that I've finally gotten to the place where the duties now match the title, right? Or I guess the other way around, the title now matches the duties. It's a great feeling. It's extremely rewarding, especially with the team that I'm on. You work so hard for something, and I feel like this is, hopefully I'm not hopefully I'm not projecting in a weird way, but I feel like most people think, okay, here's the goal, there's the goal, I'm gonna work really hard till I get the goal, and then it's time to celebrate, right? And my thinking is a little different, where it's like, okay, there's the goal, I'm gonna work very, very hard to get to that goal, but then once I'm in that position, once I'm at that goal, now I have to prove that I earned it. Like, now I have to prove to people, even though the proof is the fact that I got it, right? But for some reason, I don't want people to be let down or proven wrong or feel like they made a mistake. So now I have to, like, even though I was already at 100%, now I have to get, like, turn it up to 115% to make sure. I'm like, no, see, this is why you hired me. Like I told you I could do it. And not in a overly boastful way. And I don't even say these things out loud. This is just for my own benefit and my own satisfaction. Another thing too, and I think this is extremely underrated, because I don't see people talk about it very much on social media or wherever. So maybe I should do a class on this. But taking other classes that are not drawing, that are not filmmaking, take other classes. It helps you in so many ways, and it also depends on what your discipline is going to be. Like, if you're going to be a background painter, maybe you don't want to take acting classes, and that's understandable. But if you want to be a board artist, I think you 110% should take acting classes, because it greatly influences what you produce. But anyway, for me, taking other classes and other things, like I do recreational, like gardening. I'm not a full hobbyist, but like I'll do it from time to time, and I'll like study and learn and watch videos and like do other things about gardening, which has nothing to do with animation and filmmaking, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But it does make me think differently about something different, and maybe there's a nugget or a gem I'll glean from that to take with me moving forward. For example, I guess I just answered my own question. Patience. I can be a very impatient person, which is partly why I went to storyboarding instead of character layout, because I don't have the patience to animate things from beginning to end. And so I would rather plan it out and let that Porschmo animate it. Because first of all, they're probably much better than I'll ever be at animating. But secondly, because I, don't have the patience for it. But with gardening, you can't rush a plant to grow, right? So you have to wait to find out if your results are going to come through. I think it's a combination of those types of things that keeps me like fresher and more current, and push past currency, right, to being more creative. I believe there's room for anybody who wants it badly enough. It's not always just about talent, and I'm 100% proof of that. But because I had the patience and I had the perseverance and persistence to keep working at it and just take feedback as it's presented to me and work with the critiques, that's the only reason I got here. Literally, it wasn't because I was so much better of an artist than other people. I promise you that was not it. It was just that I was willing to outwork everybody else.